Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali on TV1.
And a very good evening to you and a warm welcome to Newsline. My guest this morning, why am I saying morning? My guest this evening is Professor Lalithasiri Gunaruwan. He's attached to the Department of Economics, University of Colombo. But he came here on a train. He had a long history in transport. But right now, he is, as he says, just a teacher. And welcome to the program, Professor Gunaruwan.
Good afternoon.
Hello. Now then, Professor, I want to ask you, the International Monetary Fund has sort of concluded a transaction with Sri Lankan agreement, and there's a lot of hope and so on about this. But the crux of the issue is that the IMF want Sri Lanka to get its finances in order, increase revenue, and so on. So I thought I'd ask you, how best should Sri Lanka go about raising revenue to meet those targets?
Faraz, thank you very much for interviewing me today. This is a very important topic for two reasons. One is that we are talking about IMF package, so-called. And on the other hand, you are focusing on raising revenue. Both are connected, as far as I'm concerned, both are connected to the economic crisis that we are facing today. Why we have to go for IMF package, bailout packages? Because we were unable to meet our basic foreign exchange needs to pay the debts, to service the debts, and also pay for our essential imports.
Yeah.
Now, with that, the question that you're asking about revenue, I think needs to be clarified further.
Okay.
Because if we are talking about revenue, generally people tend to focus on the public revenue or government revenue, fiscal revenue. I'm not saying that it is unimportant. Fiscal revenue is certainly important. But my reading, at least the way that I have analyzed this, reveals that the crux of the matter is not really the public revenue or public expenditure, but the foreign incomes and foreign expenditure that the country has.
Right.
So when you get the economy in toto for us, government is only one part of it. There is a non-government sector. There is a corporate sector. There is all other individuals and consumers, everything other than the government sector. Now, when you talk about the foreign account of Sri Lanka, the problem I see, the crux of the problem is that we have been paying for our imports more than earning on our exports ever since 1977. The last ever year we had this foreign account balance positive was 1977. So if you're talking about revenue in the sense of income on the foreign account that the country, the economy was getting through exports, I agree with you, because that is basically the crux of the problem. But if you're saying this is government revenue, the fiscal revenue, well, that is only part of the problem. I would consider it is even lesser of burden than when the economy was overwhelmingly driven by the state sector. Now we have a large private sector for us. So our income and expenditure balance on the foreign account, payment on imports and earnings of exports, the imbalance of that is crux of the problem, and which is, if you have to define imports and exports in that way, I agree, as if you say raising revenue in that aspect, that is export revenue that we earn, I agree, that is important.
So what you're saying is, you're saying that we need to maximize our export revenue, right?
Precisely. We need to focus on target on exporting more and more and more. Well,
yeah, but there's a but here, isn't there? How do you want? How should the exporters be? How can they export more when, for example, there are import restrictions? There's a shortage of dollars. There's a waiting list to get your letters of credit passed. Those are the challenges that the export market is facing. On the other hand, my question to you then is, whilst that's true, we need to focus on our exports to get our dollar revenues in and increase it. What about all these state-owned enterprises and so on that are almost licensed to lose money?
For us,
And why should the people carry on paying for that?
for us, again, this is of two components. When you talk about SOEs and the state sector, you are talking about the fiscal revenue aspect of it. Now, when you talk about exports and the import requirements of the exporting companies, and when the shortage of dollars is there, and then they are facing difficulties in importing the inputs, we are talking about the foreign account. So these two are two things. Let me first tell you one important statistic that a lot of people forget about this. In Sri Lanka, the dollar demand comes mainly on imports of essential items like petroleum and then also pharmaceuticals, etc., etc. Now, when you talk about those essential imports and also imports for as inputs for the export-oriented industries, but a larger proportion of those, if you take for consumerism, for consumer goods that you are importing, those can be substituted for us.
Indeed.
Now, the point is, as much as you have to increase your export revenue, the focus has to be there to save dollars for unsubstitutable imports that the Sri Lankan government Sri Lankan economy can produce. Now, for instance, I don't understand why the hell that you want to get cheap or even lesser priced eggs for this country. I mean, if you pay for 60 rupees per egg, that 60 rupees goes into local industries and local businesses. Though this local poultry industry is not export oriented, we should not forget that they are saving on imports. And if they do not produce, what you got to do is to import eggs. Now, similarly, our paddy farmer is not exporting, true. But if the paddy farmer is not incentivized to produce more paddy, what's going to happen is you got to import rice. So the basic issue here is not basically the state sector or state-oriented industries. Let's come to it in a minute. The bigger issue is that we have a hugely skewed, or even after 1977, every year that we have been facing this, which is we are exporting less than what we are paying for our imports. So the focus has to be bridging the foreign account and not mainly to bridge the budget deficit in the fiscal revenue. Now there, I consider IMF is wrong in the analysis. IMF is not putting enough emphasis on balancing our foreign account. Now that is number one. Number two for us is that Sri Lanka has 1% of the population, 1% of the population consuming 20% of the national income. So 1/5 of the national income is incurred into 1% of the population, the richest of the rich. And they are the ones who are highly dollar intensive. And they are the ones who are busting dollars in this country. And they are the ones who cannot walk for a quarter mile without having a car. And they are the ones who cannot sleep without air conditioner. And they are the ones who are using petroleum, not the train traveler or the public transport user like CTB buses or private buses.
Okay.
Now, therefore, the point is, we have to understand that the focus has to be in this country promoting exports. One, on the other hand, reducing imports, substituting for imports, and promoting import substitution industries in this country. Let me answer to your question about the SOEs. That is also very important. Increasing government revenue will be needed for what? To meet the government expenditure. So let's rationalize the expenditure first, will you? Now, why do you talk about SOEs to start with? When SOEs have to be profit making to start with. Now, all these SOEs we started in the beginning were in the early phase of their life. They were really worthwhile and making money. Now, who ruined those import substituting industries in this country? SOEs like Steel Corporation and Hardware Corporation and Cement Corporation and Textiles Corporations and all. Who ruined those? Those are politicians, political management, and politically appointed administrative boards. So, if you are talking about SOEs, the number one priority should be not selling or divesting or getting dollars by selling your family silver, but by making the SOEs viable and profit making. For that, for us, you have to do one important thing. Do one change in the acts of all these SOEs. The minister's authority to appoint management boards. Now, the moment the minister's authority is there, as long as we are not removing that, ministers are appointing his catchers and supporters and family members as board members into these organizations. And that's the first problem. Second, government is making political decisions, trying to win elections and trying to have popularity by ruining and by exploiting our SOEs, not raising the tariffs economically, not efficiently running those SOEs by pricing well. Now CTB is one good example. I have been working there. I know in the year 2001 why I resigned from SLCTB as a board member was because the political authorities did not want to raise the bus fares when the petroleum prices went up. Now, petroleum prices going up and the bus fares were, frozen, obviously it's a clear recipe for CTB to incur losses. Now, that you can't blame on the SLCTB's employees. It is a political decision and politicians are ruining our SOEs. So, that is the second point. Third point, for you to talk about revenue for us, let's rationalize public expenditure in terms of running the government. Do you need 225 MPs in this country? Divide the number of population and then divide it by number of MPs. Maybe Sri Lanka may be one of the countries which has highest ratio of MPs per population in this country. And do you need all these 4,000, 6,000 local government authorities in this country? And do you need these white elephants? I mean, we have, even in Colombo University, we have done a research and made a publication. The provincial councils are economically detrimental and, white elephants down there. So curtail those expenditures. And these are political white elephants that we have. So reduce those and then rationalize your expenditure before talking about revenue. Because you would start with a very high expenditure platform and then say, oh, we need to raise revenue to do that. I think that's a clear recipe for failure and clear recipe for disaster for us.
Getting rid of or optimizing, I like that word because, they're using it for domestic debt. But if we were to optimize the output of the members of parliament, that may take some time, don't you think, Professor?
I consider that may not be possible unless we rationalize the way of elections, way of contesting, and who can contest elections. Now, when you have people who are just politically with a political mindset, and they just want to run the to become an MP and then just become a minister and then win the next elections. Their mindset is not geared to, make good for the public ownership of state assets. Now we have to be mindful for us. Who owns truly these public assets? The public assets are not owned by the politicians. It's not the cabinet or it's not the MPs who own the SOEs. SOEs are owned by the people of this country and the future generations of this country. And we have to make those viable. We have to make those strong pillars to support the economic well-being of this country.
Indeed.
Unfortunately, what we have done is we have made those pillars more overburdened on the economic weight of the country. So this is the problem we have.
And let's stop right there and go for a quick break. We are in conversation with Professor Lalithasiri Gunaruwan from the University of Colombo. But it's now time to take a look at the headlines from the Primetime News team. We'll see you on the other side.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali on TV1.
Attorney General informs the Supreme Court that a referendum is required to pass the private members' bill on local government elections. Chinese Communist Party delegation meets President Wickremesinghe. Farmers from Abilipitia take to the streets, demanding water for their cultivations. SLPP unhappy over ministries not being awarded. This Sakutiarachi reveals how state ministries will be given. Commuters inconvenienced by train strike that lasted for several hours. 4 people dead and 3 missing in drowning accidents in 24 hours.
I'm sorry, 2015, August 5th,
Yeah.
there was a cabinet decision taken by the Honorable Ranjit Madhuma Bandara
Yeah.
to rehabilitate Maho Vaunia railway line by the Sri Lanka Railway Department. Now, just ask a question. How come that cabinet decision was reversed and given it to a foreign company on contract? Now, there are people in this country to shout and stand up and ask who cancelled that project, this project, all are foreign funded projects. They're very interested in knowing who cancelled those projects. But no one is asking who cancelled the locally constructible project. The cabinet approval was taken by Honorable Ranjit Madhuma Bandara in 2015. Who cancelled that project? No one is asking in this country. So when those right questions are not asked for us, when the businesses are given to foreign companies, how can the state enterprises have business and earn money? Recently, we learned that the State Engineering Corporation was selling their properties to pay salaries because they don't have business. How can a State Engineering Corporation have business when the opportunities of the government of Sri Lanka, maybe may that be railway track construction or irrigation projects or road projects or even school buildings construction, those things have to be undertaken locally as much as possible. By SOEs as much as possible. If SOEs cannot do that, you can give it to contracts to the local companies. Now, rather than getting foreign companies, we should think of spinning off this expenditure of the government as revenue to other government organizations or to the revenue to private sector companies. Then only the effective demand theory can start, working. Like John Maynard Keynes said, that effective demand is what is going to drive the economy forward. So, for you to have effective demand, the local enterprises should get the benefit of, the expenditure effect of the government. Now, what happens in Sri Lanka is government is spending and those expenditures are creating effective demand for foreign companies. When the foreign companies are getting contracts, they are, number one, very expensive compared to local estimates. You can ask a question from the existing railway people if they really know or if they're interested in telling you that. What was the estimated railway track construction cost between Maho and Vaunia in 2015? What was the estimated per kilometer cost? And compare it with the estimated, the actual cost. Now they are giving it to foreign company and getting it reconstructed. Now, I don't know the real figures now because I have no accessibility to those data. But it is important that these people who are shouting about various foreign funded projects look into these statistics and find out how much are we getting indebted, and those are debts, and we are going to pay for those. Not only this, the Jaffna line reconstruction, Talemana line reconstruction, Hambantota Beliatta line reconstruction, then the expressways, the many such projects which could have been executed locally have been given on foreign contracts. So then obviously the government expenditure goes up, and then you require revenue to meet. So you say, oh, raising revenue. These are wasteful expenditures. And also that affects the foreign account, because these are all foreign loans and those have to be paid with the interest and installments. So if you really are interested in putting the economy right, there are several important steps that have to be taken. Let's talk about that in a minute.
Actually, so how you have given us an incisive insight into why all the wrongs are going on. But what if the president was to say to you, Professor, tell me, what should we do for the next 100 days? What would you say to him?
Number one, stop this nonsensical selling off or restructuring, selling off under the guise of restructuring. Effect genuine restructuring process by studying the examples of the rest of the world. Stop giving foreign companies the contracts of government sector in Sri Lanka. Effect those contracts as best as possible through the relevant SOEs, and if not, other SOEs, and even if that is not possible, local contractors. For that, the projects of the government of Sri Lanka will have to be thoroughly appraised by the Department of National Planning. People will start coming up and saying that those who are appraised and the viability reports are there. All those reports are on foreign loans. And some of these project reports that they are preparing are again on consultants, maybe local people, but on foreign consultancies, foreign loan executed consultancies. But there is a paid office in the government of Sri Lanka, which is the Department of National Planning. Place the Department of National Planning at a relevant stature and give the powers so that the National Planning Department will do a thorough analysis on the need assessment, alternative analysis, incremental analysis, and the viability of each project and the dollar earning or dollar saving capacity if any component is needing foreign funding. Now, once those things are established, the National Planning Department can recommend the project and its structure, which component has to be done maybe on foreign contracts, and which may have to be the large component which can be executed locally can be done by the relevant agencies. And then the cabinet can make decisions. If we go beyond that kind of a thing and politically decide at the cabinet level that we do that and we do this because we are cabinet and cabinet can do anything, I think this problem is going to persist, and IMF will probably give us and give some painkillers to us, but then another 10 years down the line, we'll be in a worse crisis because the foreign debt is going to go even more than what we have today.
Thank you very much, Professor Lalithasiri Gunaruwan. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that's the way it was on Newsline this evening. It's now time for the primetime news. But not before I say, hope you have a great evening as much as you can. And of course, God bless you all.